Awesome, welcome back. So now we've got our cluster created in US East region, and you can see all of the activity that Cass took on those accounts in order to create the virtual machines and the networks and all of the VPN services and everything required to create a seamless, logical cluster across multiple clouds. Now our next step is we're going to start to work on this cluster by deploying an application. So normally I would do that by downloading this kubeconfig file, and you can go ahead and do that. I've already done that, and I've made it my default Kubernetes. I've put it into the .kube directory, so I've made it my default Kubernetes configuration file. But notice a couple of other things that Cass has automatically created for you. Without you having to go to the command line, we've already created a Kubernetes UI and created a single sign-on, so you don't actually have a separate set of credentials. So this is your cluster from the traditional Kubernetes UI project. And we can take a look. We've got a bunch of namespaces. A lot of them are Cass created, and we'll go through some of those functions in just a moment. And you'll see that we don't have any pods or workloads deployed. So this is great. We've got a clean canvas, and we can start to work on our deployment. So you'll also notice a couple of other add-ons that we've created for logging and metrics. We're going to touch those after we've deployed our app so that you can see some meaningful metrics in those environments. So let's go back, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to download this sample application called Boutique eShop, and I've got it here in my Visual Studio Editor. So if you open it up and take a look, you're going to see there's a couple of places that we really want to focus on. The first one is when you deploy this on multiple clouds, there is a section in this deployment file here that specifies how those clouds are going to be used. So under this specification here, under front end, we want front end to be deployed in at least, now the default sample has 3 clouds. I've changed it, and all I've done is I've changed the replica count from 3 to 2. And I've removed Azure from this list of values. So now we can deploy on 2 clouds rather than 3. And the second piece that we want to do is we want to take a look at the domain name for this eShop. Now, at the end of the file, you'll see there is a host name, and this is something that you need to replace from the sample. So, and you need to have your own domain that you want to serve the site on this example. So in our case, let's go ahead and we're going to call this shop3.privatesales.com. That's a domain that we have that we can play with. So cool. So now we've got our host name. I'm going to go ahead and save the file. But one thing we have to do before we can deploy the app is we have to figure out the CNAME address that the Cass has created for DNS for this cluster. There's a couple of ways to do that. Let me show you a couple of ways that we can do that. The first way we can do that is we can navigate through the Kubernetes dashboard. So if we go to here over to services, and we actually go to all namespaces, you'll notice that there is an ingress controller that's automatically created. And that is where all of your applications are going to flow through from a load balancer perspective. You'll also notice that there is external endpoint that's already pre-created for you on a domain called onmulti.cloud. So this is a little hard to read in the Kubernetes dashboard. So what we can do is we can actually use a kubectl command. So let me just copy this. kubectl get service -n in ingress nginx, and we will be able to get the domain name that we want from our cluster. So here it is. Here's the domain name. And what we're going to do is we're going to take that and we're going to plug it into our DNS provider. So in order to do that, I'm using GoDaddy, and I'm using the GoDaddy DNS Manager. And just to show you how simple this is, I'm going to select the type of record that we're going to create. We're going to create a CNAME. And remember, we called our site shop3, and we're going to point it to that CNAME that was automatically pre-created. And the reason we want to do this is because part of the cluster, part of the application deployment is we want to create certificates, we want to create an HTTPS load balancer, and all that stuff is going to come for free but we should create the CNAME ahead of time so the certificate manager can do all of the work for us. So let's go ahead and save the DNS record. So now I've got shop3. And just to make sure that things are working correctly, let's take a look and dig that domain name. So shop3.private-sales.com. Cool. So now we have our shop3 is back to that Ingress CNAME, and I think we're ready to start deployment.